Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. I have some very important information that I need to share with you today, so let's just get right to it. But before I say that, guys, I know we're all 24/7 doom and gloom on this channel. We're all about preparing for the collapse of Western civilization, and rightly so. But I will say, enjoy these sizzling, sultry summer days while you can, because they are few and far between, especially up here in the north. I know 90 million Americans right now are under heat warnings. We got the rivers drying up. We got the lakes drying up. We got the crops cooking on the vine. We got people shooting everybody up. Everywhere you go, you got to watch your six. We just had an active shooter situation here today. But I will say, my friends, as the sun sets on the Western Empire, you need to be soaking up that view as much as you can, because as crazy as it sounds, this will be referred to as the good old days in the future. Mark my words. Now, I got an email from somebody from Romania who's on the front lines of this whole war situation, all right? And they have some interesting news that we're not hearing in the West, okay? There's been a lot of talk of conscriptions and drafts and countries which are surrounding Ukraine starting to bolster their militaries in anticipation that the war is going to spread. And there is no indication that the war is slowing down at all, regardless of, whatever glimmers of hope we're catching here and there with respect to grain deals and peace talks and yada, yada, yada. The war is out of control, and it's only likely going to get worse. Now, we're also going to talk about some other things in this video. That's not the only thing we're going to talk about, all right? There's a lot of things we have to cover in a very short period of time, so let's just get right to it. Now, this email is from somebody who lives in Italy, but was born in Romania, speaks Romanian. He's talking about how the enrollment into the military used to be mandatory in his country, but that ended a long time ago. As you already know, Romania is part of NATO, and with everything that's happening right now, the government is trying to find a way to consolidate the nation's army. They want to implement new laws that would force its citizens, especially the ones living abroad, to come back and fight in case of an escalation. Now, why, might you ask, are they doing this? Well, there's this place, this long, skinny strip of land that's sandwiched in between Moldova and Ukraine called Transnistria. This is a very, very pro-Russian place. I think there's only like 1,500 troops stationed there, but as Russia pushes westward beyond the contested Odessa region, which a lot of people are saying is going to be next, it's going to be an inevitable war for Odessa. After that ship has literally sailed, no puns intended, they're going to go for Transnistria. They're going to go for the annexation of Transnistria. And this is why the Romanians are freaking out, okay? Because they're right up against Moldova. Anyways, let's carry on with this message, okay? Where did I leave off here? Whoever served in the army or simply joined the army during the mandatory program is being considered a reserve. And this is all based on a video from Romanian news. So as this is an anecdotal opinion about this news piece, it's still, semi-factual, right? A lawyer from Romania, and his name, Oral Moldovan, and he is a reserve lieutenant, and I can give his name because he shares his name within the video link that he provided me, that I will provide to you in the comment section below, has received an order to mobilization for war. He had to be at a specific military base within 8 hours, and the document said that if he did not show up within 8 hours, he would risk being imprisoned between 2 to 7 years. He was expecting a work assignment or something like that. Instead, he was shocked to find out that they called him for a status update and to clarify details like the size of his clothing and shoes, maybe to get BDUs lined up, I don't know. He obviously got very suspicious and thinks that there's more to this than meets the eye. He declared that, in his opinion, NATO is preparing for war. The newscaster tried to put out the fire very quickly, probably with the intent of to avoid the spread of panic. I'll post the link below the video just so you have proof of the original, even if the language is in Romanian. And remember, guys, especially you European bros, look how quick Ukraine went from there's not a big problem at all to conscripting everybody. Now they're even conscripting the women, and come September they're conscripting older men. Anybody who can walk and shoot straight is having a gun put in their hand. Criminals too, I believe. I think some people are even being pardoned, but don't quote me on that. So you know that this level of conscription is going to happen in your country if the war comes to you. It doesn't matter if you believe in the war or not, if you believe in the government that's in power in your country or not, you're going to war, boy. And that's just something you have to prepare for. So this is unsettling because this maps perfectly on to the fact and the news that I've been hearing that, as Lavrov indicated, that the war is going to spread beyond the Donbass, that they are now targeting up to 50% of Ukraine, and that's just for this next phase. We all know that the end result invariably is going to be a takeover of the entire country, which is going to bring NATO into that fight more and more. You're going to see more advanced weapon systems being sent. You're going to see more red lines being crossed. And you're going to see the finger hovering over the nuclear button at a much more heightened state of alert. So this is all very concerning. And now we know that the war is escalating. We know that there are going to be famines induced by this war because the two countries that are warring together are not able to do their dealings in the ways that they normally would with a lot of the countries that rely on the importation of food. Okay. And but the question is, though, what is the real risk of food shortages right now and in the future? There are two ways of looking at this. I was watching a documentary, or interview, I should say, with Joel Salatin last night. He's a organic farmer, I believe. I'm not sure what his designation would be, but he's fairly well known in the alternative media community. And, he talks about how most food shortages and food price increases, for that matter, are socioeconomic in nature, meaning that they're not necessarily due to our ability, like our actual technical ability to grow, to produce, and distribute food at scale. Okay, it's not a limitation in our technology. However, what I will say is that we're seeing a culmination of factors right now that are incredibly concerning and may well point towards our inability to actually produce food, not some socioeconomic thing, not because there's a war and we can't get, this cargo ship here and there. We may well see a point in the future where we simply are not able to grow the food that we need. Now, some people will say, well, we waste a lot of food, like 40% of food is wasted. And if you really dissect those arguments, while it's true that there is a lot of waste in our civilization, a lot of that isn't even technically waste. Like if you're talking about the food that gets wasted on the vine, that's never really waste because that goes back into the earth. That's fertilizer. Okay, that's just less fertilizer that you need for the next season. There's always going to be, when you're talking about the distribution of goods over long distances, you're always going to see a reduction in, you're always going to see losses as a result of that. Like you're always going to lose a little bit. You almost have to budget for that. So just because we have this excess that perhaps we waste doesn't necessarily mean that we have a very comfortable buffer there, is what I'm trying to say. We're looking at things right now with respect to water shortages the world over. We're looking at this climate chaos, making it harder and less predictable to grow food. We also have energy, which is the number one input into the system. If we don't have cheap, affordable energy, we cannot grow food at the scale that we currently do, as the system is currently set up to be distributed, okay, to feed these increasingly more urbanized cities, okay? We also have what else do we have? We have the issue of disease and needing more and more chemicals and more fertilizers. Now, as you know, or as you may have heard, Canada recently is talking about implementing some sort of law which would restrict the use of various fertilizers and things like that, which are, likely going to reduce agricultural output. And all of this is, insanity because we're now entering a multipolar world, right? So I think that the whole green agenda thing is DOA at this point, because for that to work, you need a global agreement of all countries. And because all countries are self-serving, you're never going to have a system by which a country self-sacrifices for the sake of minimizing their carbon footprint. Anyways, guys, what I'm saying is that while a lot of the food shortage issues that we're seeing right now are socioeconomic, i.e. man-made, we're entering an era where these food shortages may actually be out of our control. Okay, it may be due to our inability to get enough water to the places that we need it, and get that food to where we need it, to get the energy cheap enough, to get the cheap enough fertilizer, pesticides, and all of the other inputs into the system, the rising costs and all the rest. And that's concerning. That's the apocalyptic scenario. We are not there yet, but once those dominoes start to fall, they can fall very, very quickly, especially if you have conflict at the same time. Now, other things in the news today: Gazprom is now cutting its deliveries in half from the 40% of capacity that it was at to Germany. It's now cutting it down to 20%. Okay, there's something to do with a broken turbine or something like that that's continuing to be problematic. Of course, we live in this globalized world, and you know, it requires the good relations, the good multinational relations of corporations and countries to get along in order for everything to work. I don't know what things are like where you guys are at, but you know, while we might not be seeing, you know, real gross food shortages, we are seeing, you know, just things not being able to be fixed, you know, parts that you can't get, you know, shortages of this and that. And it's creating a lot of problems. And I think, you know, this is indicative of that. Now, of course, we don't know what's really going on here. We don't know if the Russians are just playing foul here, or if it's the West who is trying to, you know, or if there's something going on in the West. And I don't even want to get into speculating about infighting with respect to NATO and, you know, Canada and Germany potentially being on different sides. But they are preparing for a complete cutoff of natural gas this winter. And even in the UK is asking its citizens to help in case of winter blackouts. So a government contingency plan could force citizens to ration electricity to avoid blackouts. So they're already drawing up emergency plans. All these countries around the world are either preparing for war, or they are preparing for a significant reduction in the amount of energy that is going to be available, and even rationing in some cases. So as much as it seems like, you know, I oscillate between hope and downright dread for the future, to be brutally honest. The hope comes when I walk outside and I notice that everything is still relatively peaceful and civil where I am. But I do know that those dominoes can start falling really, really quick, in the same way they did in Ukraine. You know, we have these, and things could magically one day, you know, Zelensky's so unpredictable. The Russians are a bit more predictable, I guess you could say. But, you know, one of these days, NATO, Zelensky, and the US and China, they could just work these things out. You never know. I mean, obviously, you know, I know that's going to sound naive, but you just never know what can happen, okay? Because there's a lot, thankfully, war is a bit of a racket. And maybe if people think they've made enough money, people will be willing to go back to the bargaining table. Hopefully, that's what's happening. Because if it isn't, then we're in big, big trouble. Because on the whole, the situation looks very, very bad. You know, when World War I started, I don't think they called it World War I, you know, until afterwards. You know, it started slowly. It wasn't, you know, oh, we're in World War I, you know, and the same thing is with World War III. You know, it's not just we crossed this line and it's World War III. You know, I mean, there's the use of non-conventional munitions that would definitely tell us that we're in, you know, a world war. But these things, the starting point is very vague. So it's very likely that we're already in the thick of it. And we need to, as much as I, you know, encourage people to prepare, as much as I encourage people to constantly trying to evolve your macro preparedness, trying to improve your skills, trying to acquire the resources and the means to do so, especially when things are calm. Because I'm telling you, once a radiological event happens in Ukraine, which it will, it's likely going to happen, because they're both stockpiling military equipment at nuclear facilities, and inevitably they're going to have to either target or take over those facilities on either side. So there's going to be fighting in and around these facilities. Then of course you have the risk of actual tactical and strategic nuclear escalation. So what I'm saying is, when this happens, personal protective equipment, you won't be able to find it anywhere. It's going to be sold out worldwide, because all it takes to create a panic, like a stampede, is just one wrong move, and everybody scurries, and that's going to be what happens. It's going to be one isolated radiological event that causes the world to lose its you-know-what, and you're going to see that stuff flying off the shelves. So when things are calm, it's easy to be optimistic. It's easy to be hopeful. And I fall into this trap more than you could imagine. I know I come out with these videos every other day where they give you this grim outlook of what's going on. But by and large, I enjoy life. I love joking around, hanging around with my kids. You know, we've been doing a lot of fun things this summer, and just a lot of fun activities. But at the end of the day, you know, when I try to do a meta-analysis of what's going on with my prepper vision, it doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good. But then again, you know, I hope I'm just being pessimistic. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Does anything that I've said today, you know, make sense, or does it sound like nonsense? Let me know. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And check out some of our other videos, our funner videos, our practical how-to stuff, the blue strip stuff. And maybe, you know, it can cheer you up. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Canadian Prepper out.